The staircase gave way beneath my boot before I even knew I was falling, and for one terrifying second, all I could see was sunlight flashing through broken wood, dust rising like smoke, and the face of the woman who owned the retreat turning pale as if she had just watched a ghost step out of her past. I caught the railing with one hand, my shoulder nearly tearing from its socket, while the old steps groaned under me like they were begging to collapse completely. Below me was a drop high enough to break bones, maybe worse, and above me stood Serafina Vale, the wealthy woman everyone in town whispered about, the woman who had paid me to fix a staircase but somehow looked like she had been waiting for me to fix something much deeper. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that happen when someone sees value in a person everyone else overlooked, please like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope. And subscribe to Lifeline Diaries for more heart-touching stories. My name was Cairo Benton, and by the time I arrived at the luxury retreat that morning, the sun was already spilling gold across the hills. It was one of those bright days that made everything look expensive, even the dust on the road. The retreat sat above the valley like a mansion from another world, surrounded by tall pine trees, glass walls, stone paths, and flower beds trimmed so perfectly they looked painted on. I came in my old pickup truck with a cracked windshield, a toolbox held together with rope, and a heart carrying more weight than any tool I owned. I had been a carpenter once, a real one, the kind people trusted with custom cabinets, porch restorations, and handmade furniture. But after my father died, debt swallowed our family shop, clients disappeared, and my hands, once known for beauty, became known only for cheap repairs and emergency fixes. Serafina Vale's assistant had called me because no big contractor wanted the job. The staircase was too old, too delicate, and too urgent. It connected the main retreat house to a private garden terrace where guests had breakfast under white umbrellas. The retreat was reopening for a charity weekend, and the staircase had to be safe by sunset. I knew the kind of place before I even arrived. Rich people liked things perfect until something broke, then they wanted invisible people like me to fix it fast and disappear quietly. I expected nothing more than a day's pay and maybe a cold bottle of water if someone remembered I was human, but Serafina was not what I expected. She stood on the stone path in a cream-colored dress, her silver-black hair tied back, her eyes sharp but tired. She looked wealthy, yes, but not careless. There was sadness in her posture, the kind that expensive walls could not hide. She greeted me politely, then led me toward the staircase herself. It was made of old cedar, weathered gray by years of mountain rain, beautiful in the way forgotten things can be beautiful. But beauty did not make it safe. Several boards were soft, the side supports were cracked, and the lower frame had started pulling away from the stone foundation. I ran my palm over the wood and felt the truth immediately. This was not a small repair. This staircase had been neglected for years. I told her the job was bigger than she had been told. I expected her to argue about price, but she only looked at the stairs and said they had belonged to the original retreat built by her grandfather. Her voice changed when she said that. Suddenly, I understood. To her, this was not just wood. It was memory. It was family. It was a piece of someone she had lost. I told her I would save as much of the original structure as I could, but I would not lie about safety. For the first time that morning, she looked directly at me, not at my worn shirt or old truck or cheap boots, but at me. Then she said she wanted honesty more than perfection. I worked through the morning heat, removing damaged boards, marking weak beams, and cutting replacements from the cedar I had brought. Every sound echoed through the retreat, the buzz of my saw, the strike of my hammer, the scrape of old nails pulled from stubborn wood. Guests had not arrived yet, so the whole place felt still, like a stage waiting for actors. Serafina came by twice, not to rush me, but to watch. I could feel her eyes following my hands. Most people only saw labor when they looked at me, but she watched like she recognized skill. That made me uneasy. Praise had become dangerous in my life because it reminded me of who I used to be. By midday, I found the real problem hidden beneath the third landing. The main support beam had rotted from the inside. Outside, it looked strong. Inside, it was nearly hollow. If anyone had stepped on it during the charity event, the entire staircase could have collapsed. I stood there with my hand inside the broken beam, my stomach tightening. This was the kind of discovery that turned a simple repair into a disaster. I called Serafina over and showed her. Her face went pale, not because of the money, but because she imagined what could have happened. Children, donors, staff, elderly guests walking down to the garden. One hidden weakness could have become tragedy, then came the moment that nearly ended everything. As I tested another step, the board split under me. My leg dropped through, the railing snapped, and my body pitched forward over the side. I caught what was left of the frame with one hand and slammed against the posts hard enough to knock the air from my lungs. Pain shot through my shoulder. Dust filled my mouth. For a moment, I heard Serafina shout my name, and there was fear in her voice that did not sound like a woman worried about liability. It sounded like a person terrified of losing someone. That I managed to pull myself up, shaking and embarrassed, but she rushed to me and insisted I sit. Her hands trembled as she gave me water. I told her I was fine, though my shoulder burned and my pride hurt worse. She said the staircase could wait, but I looked at the broken frame and knew it could not. The retreat had staff preparing inside, deliveries arriving, flowers being arranged, and cars expected by evening. If I walked away, the event would fail, and maybe the old staircase would be torn down by morning. Something in me refused to let that happen. Maybe because I knew what it felt like to be declared too damaged to save. So I kept working. The afternoon sun grew warmer, spilling light across the garden terrace. Sweat soaked my back. My shoulder throbbed every time I lifted a beam. Serafina ordered lunch for me, but I barely touched it. I was too focused, too afraid of missing something. Slowly, the staircase began to change. I reinforced the hidden frame, replaced rotten supports, preserved the original cedar wherever it was strong enough, and shaped the new boards so they blended with the old. I did not just repair it. I honored it. That was what my father had taught me before life became bills, funerals, and locked doors. Wood has memory, he used to say. If you listen, it tells you what it needs. Near sunset, Serafina came back and stood silently behind me as I sanded the railing smooth. The sky had turned orange, and the retreat windows reflected the hills like fire. I thought she would inspect the work, maybe ask for an invoice, maybe say thank you in the polished way rich people say it when they are already thinking about something else. Instead, she asked where I had learned to work like that. I told her about my father's shop. I told her about losing it. I did not mean to say so much, but the day had worn me open. I told her how my father built furniture people kept for generations, how I had dreamed of expanding the shop, how after his heart attack everything collapsed faster than I could hold it together. I told her I still had his old sign in my apartment, wrapped in a blanket because I could not bring myself to throw it away. Serafina listened without interrupting. Then she told me the retreat had once been her grandfather's carpentry lodge before it became a luxury escape. He had built the first staircase himself. He had built the garden benches, the old doors, even the dining hall tables. After he died, investors changed the place, polished it, renamed it, and made it profitable, but she always felt like something honest had been buried under all the luxury. That staircase, she said, was one of the last things left that still carried his hands. When I finished, the staircase stood strong again. Not new, not fake, not stripped of its past, but steady. Serafina stepped onto the first stair slowly, then the second, then the third. I watched her hand touch the railing. Her eyes filled with tears, but she did not wipe them away. She walked all the way down to the garden terrace, then turned back toward me. In the golden evening light, she looked less like the rich woman everyone whispered about and more like a granddaughter who had just found her way home. The charity guests arrived soon after. I packed my tools quickly, ready to leave through the service road. Men like me were usually gone before the champagne glasses came out. But as I lifted my toolbox into the truck, Serafina called my name. She asked me to stay for a few minutes. I felt uncomfortable in my dusty clothes among people stepping out of black cars, but she did not care. She led a small group of donors to the staircase and told them what had happened, how close they had come to danger, and how one craftsman had saved not only the event but a piece of her family history. People turned to look at me. I wanted to disappear, but then they applauded. It was not loud at first, just polite, then warmer, then real. My throat tightened because I could not remember the last time anyone clapped for something my hands had made. Later, when the garden lights came on and music floated through the trees, Serafina asked me to walk with her to an old building behind the retreat. It was hidden beyond the guest cottages, covered in ivy, with wide wooden doors and dusty windows. She unlocked it with a brass key. Inside was a forgotten workshop. Workbenches lined the walls. Old clamps hung from hooks. Sunlight slipped through cracks in the roof, revealing sawdust that had probably been there for decades. My heart stopped. It smelled like cedar, oil, and memory. It smelled like my father's shop. Serafina told me her grandfather had worked there before the retreat became famous. The place had been closed for years because no one knew what to do with it. She said she had planned to renovate it into another guest suite, but after watching me work, she realized it was never meant to become a room with expensive pillows and perfect curtains. It was meant to become a workshop again. Then she handed me the key.at first. I thought she wanted me to restore it. I started explaining that I could give her a fair price, maybe work evenings, maybe do it in stages. But she shook her head and said the workshop was mine to use. Not as a gift thrown from wealth to poverty, not as charity, but as a partnership. She wanted handmade furniture, restored pieces, and custom woodwork for the retreat. She wanted guests to see real craftsmanship again. She would cover the renovation, provide the space, and give me the first contract. After that, I could take my own clients too. My own workshop. My own name on the door that I could not speak. I looked at the benches, the old tools, the dust glowing in the last light of day, and something inside me broke open. For years, I had believed my dream was dead. I had carried grief like a toolbox with no handle, heavy and awkward, always cutting into me. And now, in a place I thought I did not belong, a door had opened. Not because I begged. Not because I pretended to be someone else. But because I showed up, did honest work, and someone finally saw the heart behind my hands. Weeks passed, and the old workshop came back to life. I repaired the roof, cleaned the benches, sharpened the tools, and hung my father's sign above the entrance. Benton and Son Woodworks. The first time I saw it there, I cried alone before sunrise. Serafina never mentioned my tears, though I think she knew. She visited often, bringing coffee, ideas, and sometimes silence. We became friends in the quiet way grown people become friends after loss, not by asking too many questions, but by making space for each other to breathe. The retreat changed too. Guests began asking about the handmade benches, the restored tables, the staircase that had survived storms and time. Serafina placed a small card near the garden steps explaining that the staircase had been restored by a local craftsman using original cedar and traditional methods. People started calling. Then more calls came. A couple wanted a dining table. A hotel wanted restored doors. A school asked for memorial benches. My calendar filled slowly, then completely. I hired a young apprentice named Ivan, a quiet kid who reminded me of myself before disappointment taught me to lower my eyes. I taught him the way my father taught me. Measure twice. Cut once. Respect the grain. Never rush what is meant to last. One bright morning, almost exactly 1 year after the staircase nearly collapsed beneath me, Serafina hosted another charity event at the retreat. This time, I was not there as a repairman hiding near the service road. I was there as the owner of Benton and Son Woodworks, with a display of handmade pieces under the garden trees. The staircase shone softly in the sunlight behind me, strong and beautiful, every step holding both old history and new hope. Serafina stood beside me as guests admired the work, and for a moment, I felt my father there too, not as a ghost, but as warmth in my chest. Before the event ended, Serafina raised a glass and told everyone that some people do not need to be rescued, they only need a door unlocked. I looked at the workshop in the distance, the one that had given me back my purpose, and I understood that kindness does not always arrive with grand speeches. Sometimes it arrives as trust. Sometimes it arrives as a key placed in your palm. Sometimes it arrives after a staircase breaks, forcing everyone to see what was rotten, what was worth saving, and who was strong enough to rebuild it. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Diaries. Your support helps stories of kindness, hope, and second chances reach more people who may need them today. And before this story ends, please comment one word, hope, if you believe that one act of kindness can change a person's entire life. I still open the workshop every morning before the sun fully rises. I run my hand over the old wooden door, breathe in the scent of cedar, and listen as the retreat slowly wakes around me. The staircase is still there, carrying guests down to the garden, holding firm beneath every step. Some people see only repaired wood when they look at it, but I see the day my life almost fell apart and somehow became whole again. I see a woman who remembered her grandfather through my work. I see a man who thought his dream had died, only to find it waiting behind locked doors. And every time the morning light touches those stairs, I remember this truth: sometimes the broken places are not the end of the story. Sometimes they are exactly where the rebuilding begins.